All right, so this is cell collective. Looking at the photosynthesis model, we have to start off by clicking lesson started, then move on up to the learning activities here. Okay. These first parts is just kind of telling you how to do these various things. So our first investigation, we're going to build a model, two mutually dependent processes like dependent reactions and the Calvin cycle. Okay, this is photosynthesis. So looking at our model over here on our right, the key ingredient for light-dependent reactions that's missing is sunlight, right? We need energy from the sun. So we're going to go ahead up here. We're going to double click and we're going to add sunlight. Okay. Then you're going to hit shift and click on that sunlight so that it turns orange. Okay. Now we're going to connect this to our light dependent reactions because we need sunlight for those light dependent reactions to occur. Okay. And so we've got that green arrow connecting them. Okay. And then as you go through this, make sure you're answering the questions on that separate document. So now we've done everything it says here. We'll jump to page 2. Okay. Glucose production is endergonic, requires energy. Calvin cycle produces glucose by absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and so on. We're going to add ATP and NADPH to our model within the chloroplast. Okay. So I'm going to double click here. And I'm going to add ATP. And I'm going to double click and add our NADPH molecules. Okay. And so now we're going to connect these components to the Calvin cycle. Okay. So these bad boys go into the Calvin cycle. Okay. If there is CO2 but no ATP or NADPH, Calvin cycle cannot produce glucose. All the energy in the world won't create glucose via the Calvin cycle if you don't have all three of these molecules. Okay, so we want to select the Calvin cycle and look at our regulatory panel here. Rather than it stating either ATP or CO2 activate the Calvin cycle, we want it to state that ATP and NADPH and CO2 are all required. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a condition within CO2. We're going to click the plus. Okay. Sign underneath CO2. We're going to drag our NADPH into there. Okay. If/when NADPH, delete the extra orange NADPH. We can get rid of that one. Drag and release ATP on top of NADPH. Okay, should place ATP into the condition as well to read if/when ATP, I'm losing myself here, or NADPH are active. Delete the extra ATP. Lastly, click the word independent with the conditions to change it to cooperative if and when ATP and NADPH are active. Okay, so I'm going to just double check I've done all of these things correctly. Did that connect these components to the Calvin cycle? Okay, if there is CO2 but no ATP or NADPH. Okay, excellent. Okay, and so now we can move to page 3. And so within your model, ensure you place ATP and NADPH on the bottom left side of the chloroplast. So it wants us to actually shift these down. And so in order to do that, I need to hit this button. Nope, that's not right. Can I just grab it? All right, well, to move them, toggle from edit pencil mode in the graph to the I mode. So I did, right? There we go. And they want these in the bottom left. Okay. And then we can go back to pencil mode. Okay. Connect ATP and NADPH to the light-dependent reactants, right? So the light-dependent reactions are going to produce these things. So we draw the arrows to them. Okay. Add the components NAD plus and NADPPI to the upper right side of the chloroplast. So we've got our NADP plus, and we have our ADP plus PI. So these are the molecules that don't have the hydrogen or are not phosphorylated. And these are produced out of the Calvin cycle. And then they're going to re-enter the light-dependent reactions so that when we get those hydrogens and we get that energy from the sun, they become this ATP and NADPH to jump back into this process. Okay. Light-dependent reactions process can only occur in the presence of sunlight, requires these and H2O as well. Add this condition to the model same way as before. So we're going to click our light-dependent reactions. Within this regulatory panel on the right, we're going to click the plus sign next to conditions under the light/sunlight component. Okay, we're going to drag our ADPI here and our NAD plus here. We're going to get rid of these two now. Okay, got that. Drag H2O on top of this. Remove that extra H2O. Okay, click from independent to cooperative. Should now read if when ADP, H2O, and ADPH should have ands in there are active, cooperative. Okay, so that's exactly what we've done. We can jump to page 4. Okay, so now we're looking at simulations. Okay, so let's simulate the behavior of the model you built to ensure it was built correctly. So within the activity network panel, we're going to click oxygen. Okay, so our activity network, we're going to click oxygen here. Boom, so that it's got this half circle filled in. Okay. Within the simulation control panel, locate initial state. Okay, click the drop-down arrow and go add initial state. This will set all components to active initially. Next, check all components within the internal components in the third column on the table with the bullseye. So we're going to click every single one of these in this column, and make sure you scroll so that you do get them all clicked. Okay. Within the external components panel, set all components activity level to 100%. And you may have to scroll here. I've got a pretty small screen. Nope, just the 3 of them. Okay. Then save your work if you signed in, and then you'll jump to page 5. Okay, and so all of those things, make sure that we set this ADP PI as well. Okay, all of those things that we did should be set. So we're going to record our simulation output for the following 3 experiments. What happens to oxygen production in the simulation graph when all 3 components are available at 100% activity, and then you start the simulation. Okay, so we're going to hit play. We're going to watch, and the oxygen production stays way up. We're producing oxygen this whole time. Excellent. 7. What happens to oxygen production in the simulation graph when you stop the simulation? Keep sunlight available at 100%. Set H2O and CO2 to 0. Okay, so we hit play. We see oxygen shoots down because it doesn't have those reactants anymore. So just follow the directions as it gives in the rest of these questions, and you should be good to go for the rest of these simulations.